Hello, my name is BJ Paris. Welcome to Tapping Into His Treasures. If you see any Easter eggs on the tree behind me, it's because it's the Easter season. So I'm not cracking up. Not yet anyway. Our subject today is balance. There's a good balance to things. There's a false balance to things. I just thought it would be an interesting subject to delve into. We all know what a scale is. There are so many types of scales throughout the world. So kind of picture in your mind a scale, either one at the grocery store or the produce section, just any kind of a scale. A scale is an object used to measure weight. And if you're picturing, let's say, picturing the one at the produce section, you know that the scales have calibrated lines. And years ago, it was a common practice for butchers especially to press down a little bit on the scales when they were weighing meat for the customers so that they would be charged more for the purchase. And in doing so, the store owner would increase the size of his profit. Well, that was wrong, and God likes a just weight, a balanced weight. The Bible teaches a balance in all things in life. How could a bank or financial institution or a business or even a home keep a budget without balancing debts against credits? Whether it's a government or a single family, it takes a chart to see the difference between income and expenses. You know how they show on TV sometimes the circle pertaining to the government, the circle with all the pie-shaped pieces in the circle. And as far as government, one pie slice would represent the military, and another slice would represent human services. Another slice would represent education, and so on and so forth. Well, it's the same with a family. Whether it's a single mom's family or a single guy's family or a family with a mother and father and 2 or 3 kids, it's the same for everybody, only on a smaller basis, of course. So we're going to explore some of these things today. If the two are not balanced out, the debits and the expenses, it will result in utter chaos. And this is ongoing today. You know the story. The electric bill goes unpaid while the family buys a TV screen as big as the movie theater, in the movie theaters. And there are expensive video games and all kinds of electronic games, but the bills are not paid. That is what we're getting at. That is off balance. It's false balance. And you could probably come up with more ideas about false balances than I can. And we could really talk for hours about the subject. There should be a balance. I'm just going to share some of the things that popped in my head. There should be a balance between giving and receiving. It's wonderful to give to others, and many people do, yet they can't receive from others. Have you ever known anybody like that? I do. I've taken the last few years to get over it. A better balance would be for these people to be able to receive once in a while. Some are so off balance that they would feel guilty if they accepted even a small, inexpensive thank you gift. Neither should a person be on the receiving end of money, gifts, and favors, and more without giving back in return. You can't take, and not give back. Many of us have known people who would always visit at supper time. By purposing to do this with a few different families, it has cut their food shopping bill down to almost nothing. It's a scheme. These people are off balance. We all love to have company for supper. I especially do. But years ago, when I had one couple, the same couple, there 31 days in 1 month, right at supper time, I wasn't happy. They were terribly off balance. And you know people like that. What about the amount of TV that families watch, the amount of hours they're on the computer, the movies, video games again, I said that before. Some of these things should be replaced, or not completely replaced, but we should spend much less time on that and replace some of them with educational things, in books, in online courses, in night school classes, in community meetings, in Bible studies. Too many sports for kids. There is virtually no home life for today's families. It's off balance. And I did the same thing. I did the same thing for a period of time when my kids were young. They were all on different baseball teams and I was in the car all the time. But they didn't have baseball and soccer and basketball and dance and this and that. It was mainly baseball. Just that there were 3 kids and that was kind of a lot to have on different teams. So yeah, I had to make time with my kids to pray together and to have some Bible lessons and to do some family stuff and to make sure that the siblings got to play with each other and interact. And that's what I'm getting at. That's entirely what I'm getting at. And you know, parents will defend their decisions to the death. But later on in life when they reflect, they're going to say that they didn't take enough time for family time. There is too much work and not enough play. Would you agree? In today's society, I just feel bad for adults today. I'm not glad I'm disabled, but I'm glad I'm not in the workforce anymore. I would encourage you to make a crude homemade calendar. And I'll tell you what I use sometimes. You know the big white poster papers? I get them at the Walmart. It's like 48 cents a sheet. And they're so versatile. I put them on the floor with the crayons for my little great-granddaughter when she comes. She'll take my hand and she'll trace my fingers on it. And she loves it. So I even make a big calendar for myself because I can, when I see the whole month at a time, it shows me more than these little rinky-dink calendars. So I would encourage you to make a homemade calendar with big boxes and enter your monthly activities, work, appointments, times with friends, and so forth on the calendar. And you would be shocked to see how little time you spend with your family compared to the time you spend with your friends. You will be equally shocked to see how little time you rest compared to the hours that you work. If you try to keep track of these balances in your head, you're not going to see the accurate picture. I was going to say one more thing too. Well, you really need to invest in family because, you know, your friends are going to be scattered as the years go on, but your family's always going to be there. So you really need to invest in your family group. And you can also do this exercise with the sweets that we eat, and I'm just as guilty as everybody else. Stop and record at the end of one day all the sweets that went into your body, that go into your body. From cake and pie and ice cream and candy and cookies and all the rest. And if you see it all written down at the end of the day, like I did this last week, I'm going, I cannot believe that I took in all those sweets in the course of the day. So I'd encourage you to do it. Another area, parents disciplining children. Many parents are so negligent in disciplining children and teens, they're off balance. They know they should, but they want to avoid arguments to keep the peace. So they're off balance, but that brings on more problems. Sure, it's nice to have peace in the home and the kid gets what he wants, but what are you raising? You're raising a monster. You're off balance when you do that. Hey, this is good. Listen to this. I watched a documentary of Thomas Jefferson a few nights ago. It was in 2 parts. I watched one day and the second part the next day. And pertaining to balance, it was stated on that documentary that he had a balance between his head and his heart. Well, I found that very interesting. And we'll get to that in a second. A lot of people get through life with their minds, with intelligence, education. A lot of people control other people. A lot of people have pride. Some people have no concern for other people's feelings. A lot of people are controlled by their hearts. And that's commendable, that they have a softness for their fellow man. Yet, real sensitive people like that, they could never be a leader or run a government or even a group because they're too one-sided. They could very easily be off balance. Can you imagine what our country would be like if we had somebody leading it with only his heart? Now, Thomas Jefferson and our other founding fathers may not have been perfect, but Thomas Jefferson had genius, and he had a sensitive heart for every single human being. That's the difference, and that's the balance. I love the balance. Another example. I've known people who were in the hospital who were inundated with company. Of course, they love when friends stop by for a few minutes. But some of them had their families surrounding their beds 24/7. I'm not kidding you. I've been to visit people when the husband was there and never went home, and when the daughter was sprawled out, when she was in the TV room, when the daughter was sprawled out on the couch, sleeping, and my friend who was there, and this is only one instance, just wanted to be alone. I've been in other patients' rooms, friends, elderly people, when the families talked about things out loud, things that should have been talked about privately with the doctor. So the patient had to overhear things pertaining to their last days and everything. It was terrible. Well, I think that some hospital patients deserve some quiet time, to lie their heads back on the pillow and to have complete mental rest. Their family visitors shouldn't be off balance and should have some respect for them in this area. And this goes on every hour of the day in every part of the world. And what about the person who is so turned off by society that he or she becomes a recluse? Let's go with he. He thinks that everyone in the world is a hypocrite, so he sits in front of his TV with his six-pack and takes no interest in his community. He is his own friend. He just likes being alone. Well, this can happen very easily. I know, because I'm inclined to be by myself. I love just being in my house with comfortable clothing, with everything at my disposal. But I have to, on purpose, force myself to get out and socialize. I would encourage you, recluses, to do the same thing. The reason being is because too much aloneness is off balance, and God does not want us to be alone all the time. As Christians especially, we take in God's Word, His love, His instruction, we receive His blessings. The balance of this is to throw out all the garbage that comes into our lives, our thoughts and our emotions on a daily basis. Listen to this question that I'm going to pose. What would it be like if it were just one-sided and we just took in all the time and we failed to empty the garbage from our soul? It would be off balance for us to do that. What good would all the instruction we take in do us if the clutter in our minds kept piling up and hiding all the good stuff? I hope you will really, even after the show today, that you will really meditate before God on some of these things. We take in and we pour out. In the first few years of our Christianity, we take in and give out very little. But there comes a time when God expects us to give out and not just to take in. You need to give out if you've been taking in for many, many years. You need to approach people on purpose to tell them about salvation, to tell them what's in store if they if they don't consider their eternal destiny. You need to take the time to share God's love. You need to take the time to glorify the Lord, to watch somebody's kid for a couple of hours so she can catch a nap. Do things like this that aren't really appeasing to you or might be sacrificial. You need to do things like that because you're not a milk Christian anymore, many of you. You need to go on to me and to learn some deeper things and to exercise Christianity, put it in action. So let's see, where was I? Another area of a poor balance in women, especially when they become Christians, like so many, it's the wonderful discovery that we eat, sleep, and think Christianity in Christ in the beginning. And we should do it not only in the beginning, but here's what I'm getting at. But they do it so much in the beginning that they take it so far as to neglect their family, their children, and their houses. Some women do this. And they think they're doing God a favor by getting together with others and praying all the time, but letting everything else go, forgetting that they have responsibilities in their home and family. The truth is that God wants them to be good wives and mothers and housekeepers. He wants them to wash the dishes or load the dishwasher as unto the Lord. He wants them to change diapers as unto the Lord. He never intended for these women to put on God and then take him off when they tend to their household tasks. Proverbs 11:1 in the Bible. I don't know why. It's one of the first verses, and I have never memorized many Bible verses, but it's one that God gave me when I became born again 40 years ago, and it stuck with me all through life. And I probably could only recite 4 or 5 verses in the whole Bible. I know the Bible, but I'm no good at memorizing. But this one God gave me, so he must have given it to me for a reason. He wouldn't let me forget it. And it reads, a false balance, excuse me, a false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Isn't that precious? A just weight is his delight. The dictionary describes abomination as abhorred, an intense aversion, loathing. These are strong words. If God didn't have strong feelings about a false balance, he would not have written that a false balance is an abomination to himself. He would have been passive and wrote, I, God, don't like a false balance, or I, God, frown upon a false balance. But he didn't. He wrote that a false balance is an abomination to him. So we have to take that seriously. Light and darkness. When God created the universe, he gave us light for day and darkness for night. Have you ever tried to sleep when it was light outside? It's difficult to do. I know I used to work the night shift. It was so hard to sleep during the day. I mean, yes, dogs were barking and you could hear lawnmowers and stuff like that, but even if I didn't hear things like that, it was just the light. That's why shades with the dark shades to block out the light for people who sleep during the day. That's why they were designed. But anyway, God gave light to balance out darkness. And he knew what he was doing. He did it for our benefit. In the book of Ecclesiastes, in chapter 3, it's just a couple of verses, maybe two or three or four, 3 verses, I want to touch on. It says, there's a time to be born, and a time, I don't know which one of it's one or two, a time to be born and a time to die. One balances out the other. What if there were no balance and people were just born but did not die? You ever stop and think about that? Where would the food come for all these people? The world would be overpopulated. But God did that in balance. In balance. A time to plant and a time to pluck. Many of you have gardens out there. You plant them and you harvest them. If there wasn't a time to plant, we would have no vegetables. All those things in the grocery store on the shelves, canned tomatoes, canned soup, canned this, canned that, well, essentially all comes from the vegetables that we plant in the gardens. We go to the factories to put them in the cans. And can you imagine, in your mind's eye, what tens of thousands of acres of vegetables would look like if farmers did not pluck or harvest their plantations and gardens? Vegetables would turn rotten and would smell putrid. A time to plant and a time to pluck. And I don't have this one down, but it just reminded me, I just thought of it, a time to take and a time to give away. Because I remember when I came to this apartment, I was so worried about my not being able to bring all my stuff with me. And that's the peace that God gave me, like a confirmation. He gave me that verse. It was time to give away. It was time to give away. But I couldn't have done it without God telling me that directly from heaven, because He knows all and I trust Him implicitly. And it was time to give away, which I did. Verse 3, a time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. You see the balance? We must take time to heal. We were never meant to suck it up, so they say. It is unhealthy not to let the mind heal from grief and pain. It is also unhealthy to work, and study, and not taking time to rest. It's unhealthy. It's off balance. You know what? I remember Bob Hope, with his busy schedule of going around to all the servicemen overseas. I read about him. And some of you that are in college and with jobs, you'll say, I can't. Well, I know that feeling. But with Bob Hope, he learned to utilize the time to the utmost. And he would take 10-minute breaks. It's amazing what you can do to the mind and the body. Well, whatever you do to the mind affects the body. He would go in this quiet place before they performed in different intervals during the day. And he would do like a mental yoga. With Christians, you can do it with a mental Jesus. And for 10 minutes, he learned to block everything out. And if something tried to make its way in, he was trained himself, disciplined himself to block it out. He wouldn't let it in. That's what I do when I go to bed at night. Block it out, and when you do it night after night, you train yourself that you can actually do it. Don't let the thoughts of the day pop in. As luxurious as that is to just lay back and think about the day. But if you want to go right to sleep, and if you're pressured for time and all, and you need to sleep and not lay there for hours, you can do it. And Bob Hope did it. And he had a very successful career and very successful marriage and family life. And he didn't tire because of it. He trained his body. So he had perfect balance. Even though his schedule was horrendous, he had perfect balance. Anybody could do it. Anybody could do it. Verse 4. It's a time to weep and a time to laugh. Perfect balance by God. A time to mourn and a time to dance. Balance. What if we were permitted to go through our entire lives laughing from continual funny happenings and continuous overwhelming joy? We would get sick of laughing. Would you agree? We would take happiness for granted. Excuse me. We would take happiness for granted. A time to weep. What if God didn't give us balance in this? What if we cried unceasingly throughout each day of the week? We would be drained. The crying would produce great stress, which would affect every part of our bodies. We would shy away from other people, and other people would shy away from us because no one could stand to be around someone who cried all the time. A time to mourn. Our emotions must have a time to mourn, especially someone that we have lost, someone close. If someone sets out to be a Mr. Strong, not allowing himself time to mourn. He's holding something in that needs to be released. There is also a time to allow yourself to get over a mourning. You must go on. A time to dance. There is so much unfairness in this life that down times make it almost impossible for a human being to bear. So why wouldn't God say to us in His Word, there's a time to dance? We need to dance to celebrate Jesus coming to earth to give His life for us. That is cause to dance. And lastly, I wanted to share a recent testimony of mine that just happened last week. I've been working on this 2,000-piece puzzle that my kids gave me since the beginning of January, and here it is the end of March. And I've got about 1,900 of the 2,000 pieces in it. And all the remaining pieces are black. And I'm really at a dead end to the point that where pieces belong, there are none that would fit there, which means there are some in the puzzle in wrong places. And every time I look at my table, it's like, I want my table back. I want my dinette back. So, but worse than that was, I felt the Spirit of God tugging at me and tugging at me, that I was putting too many hours into that. And every time He did that, well, He told me I was addicted to it. My excuse was always, well, God, I always do my Christian work before I sit down with the puzzle. I always put you first. But it was an excuse because I could still hear His still small voice. That it was a waste of time. Here it is, the last days. You know, He's got souls on His mind, and I'm putting 200 hours into this puzzle. Well, here's what He did. I just got to the point that I got these white poster boards that I was telling you about before, and I put them on top of the puzzle, and then I put my tablecloth on top of that, and then I put a centerpiece in the middle, and I couldn't see the puzzle anymore. And I was so relieved. I was so sick of doing the puzzle. And I'm just going to give it away anyway. But anyway, 5 minutes later, I turned on the, not TV, I put a CD on of a class on Psalm 2 that my ministry founding father preached probably 15 years ago. And honest, in the first 5 minutes, this is what he said. 5 minutes after I did the puzzle, he said, what is my full potential? Give up what you need to give up. Work hard and work smart to accomplish it. Well, I was pierced. My full potential. My full potential is to get on more TV stations. I'm so comfortable with the 10 that I have that I want to just stay here for another year before I get some more. But God said, this is my full potential, to go after more TV stations and not to sit on my lease doing puzzles. He wouldn't have had a problem with me putting 50 hours into that puzzle over almost 3 months. He would not have had a problem with that at all. But the $200 was dollars. Really, I would love to have $200. The 200 hours always way off balance. And He showed me, and what was so beautiful about it was He was so full of grace that He didn't come down quite that hard while it was still doing the puzzle, because He wanted to show me grace. It was after I did it and put it away, so to speak, 5 minutes after that. Isn't that a gracious God? I love Him for that. So anyway, He taught me to stop responding to all these projections in the atmosphere and stop making excuses. I needed to give up the puzzle, and I need to get busy with marketing is what I need to do.